The Blue Moon Dragon, Part 3. Unfortunately, all good things must come to an end. One stormy night, their closely guarded secret was discovered by a jealous attendant, and, when promptly brought to the attention of His Majesty, his fury knew no bounds. He had 3 sons, but only 1 daughter, and now his darling daughter had been sullied by this dastardly intruder. Immediately a trap was devised to capture this brazen interloper. When the opportunity struck, armed guards descended on him. Mariaki Brugh could have transformed himself into his true form and incinerated them all, but he was far too concerned for the princess's well-being, so he allowed himself to be captured and brought in chains before His Majesty. The king was in his murderous mood and could not be reasoned with. Despite severe beating and torture, the truth could not be attained, yet a most heinous, ruthless punishment was pronounced upon the presumed culprit. Badly bruised, bleeding profusely with many ribs and bones broken, for in this form he was as vulnerable as any human was, Mariaki was dragged outside by his chains for the administration of his harsh punishment. As soon as he was outside of the audience hall, he was able to use his skills and simply vanished into thin air. The poor guards, unfortunately, were made to suffer for their failure. Meanwhile, the princess was confined to new quarters high up in the tower, and this time placed under close scrutiny. She was watched day and night, as the general consensus was that she was under the spell of a malevolent sorcerer. For the good part of the year, she was a virtual prisoner, never allowed a moment's peace in all the time, nor was she left alone for a single moment. Day after day, month after month, the attending priests and palace doctors had come to and fro, at first keeping her heavily sedated, then gradually endowing her with small portions of added liberties. She was eventually allowed to return to her more luxurious former quarters after she pretended she had been cured from the paranormal malady. Despite all their persuasive methods and medical concoctions forced to ingest, however, deep within her soul and heart she maintained the seeds of affection for her beloved Mariaki. When things grew unbearable, she drew strength from her memories of times shared with him. This source of happiness, the like of which she'd never known, was after all inexhaustible. So long as she drew breath, she knew she could never forsake him, for he, her first true love, was already an inseparable part of her being. 3 nights hence would be the second full moon of the last month of the year, also known as the Blue Moon. Theirs was a superstitious nation. So many candles were lit, and the residual smoke from the burning of incense, imbued with scent crafted to scare away evil, permeated the air till dawn. Meanwhile, the priests beat drums and held prayers, sessions, and sacrifices to appease the wandering evil spirits of the full moon. As soon as dusk fell, confident in their measures to rid the palace of the least evil, exhausted from vigorous day's activities, all denizens of the palace and the city had fallen into deep slumber, peacefully tucked under their warm quilts in their beds. Complete silence prevailed throughout the palace and the land. At stroke of midnight, the princess suddenly awoke with a start. She had sensed movement in the room. True enough, there he was. The handsome young man was now turning away from the window to smile at her. How fortunate that she had left the window ajar. "Please do not be frightened," he approached her hesitantly. "I'm sorry I've disturbed you." He bit the corner of his lip to constrain the bursting motions of rage and sorrow. "You've endured such hardships on my account. I meant to come earlier, but—" "It is I who should beg your forgiveness," she interjected, and eyes brimming with tears, she shook her head in dismay. "They've treated you so abominably, and I felt so helpless to do anything about it." In truth, she'd done her best to sway them. In the beginning, she'd even secured her mother's help to appealing to her compassion, and when that yielded no result, enlisted her brother's help to reason with a father hell-bent on revenge. But it was all to no avail. Instead, all her efforts had further convinced His Majesty of her possession by the evil sorcerer, otherwise known as the Blue Moon entity, as well as necessitating harsher measures and her prolonged incarceration. It grieves me to say this, but I've come to bid you farewell. I will not forget you ever." Mariaki turned to hide the emerging tears. Rushing over, she grabbed his arm and in a sobbing voice pleaded, "Please, don't go. But if you must, I want to go with you, wherever that may be." He smiled and, cupping her face, looked deep into her eyes. "I've come to love you so very much." He leaned over and gently planted a kiss on her forehead. "Know this, regardless of any future outcome, you are now and forever will be my one and only mate." His face grew grim and added, "However, I should have known there was so little, perhaps no chance at all, for us. I'm sorry. This is the way it must be for now." He turned to go, then stopped, and after a thoughtful pause, drew from his finger a ring. Then he took off his shiny blue coat and presented both of them to her. "One thing I have learned is that there are infinite possibilities to this universe, and that nothing in it can be deemed impossible. Out of my deep regret and affection for you, I offer you the freedom to choose. Conceal this ring well and guard our shared secret. Wear this garment when the blue moon manifests, and remember that I love you from far. If at the conclusion of your lifespan you still have some affections for me, put on this ring on your forefinger and don the blue cloak. On that night I give you my solemn pledge that I will return, and from that day hence we shall be eternally together." He then transformed into a songbird and flew out the window. Wiping her tears, she folded the garment carefully and placed it in the drawer of her night table, but she sought a more secure location to hide the ring. As it so happened, there was a stone encased in loose mortar in a dark corner of the room behind some furniture. She discovered it when she was a child and concealed her most prized possessions there. It also contained the moon rock he had sculpted to resemble a bird. Opening this niche, she placed the ring alongside her other prized possessions. Then, overcome with fatigue, when she went back to her bed and lay down, she was too emotional or overwrought to sleep.